We were thrilled to bring a new partner into our orbit this year. Potato is one of the leading agencies in the world, and here to do our next introduction is Perry Tell with Potato, the SVP of North America. Fantastic group. Let's give it up for Perry Tell.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Las Vegas. Potato is a design consultancy. We are 100 people based in London and San Francisco. We are deeply involved in strategy and production of technology, particularly in the area of voice. And we are excited to be here today. Next. We help companies launch purposeful products that deliver better outcomes. And if we do our job right, we help to improve people's lives. We have an exciting program for you today, including some of our friends from Disney, from Mercedes-Benz, and a moderator from Amazon. We will carry on. I will introduce to you our VP of Product and Design, Nick Carey. Thank you very much for being here.
Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Nick. I'm VP of Product Design at Potato. I've been involved in voice for about 3-4 years, really seen an interesting development in how we build voice experiences. And today what I'm going to talk about is a little bit different, which is about why voice experiences are great at building loyalty, and particularly about the relationship opportunity for brands to talk directly to their customer, learn about them, and really build a long-lasting relationship. And so, like many talks, I'm going to do a why, what, how. But rather than tell you why voice, which I'm sure you've all heard all day and everyone's here if you already know why we're in voice, I'm going to talk a little bit differently about why do we become loyal to certain brands and why would voice help us become loyal to those brands. And so at Potato, as Perry mentioned, we like to think about purpose a lot. Purpose is really important in our work. It's about why we believe the brands that we're working with and the technology we're working on is important in providing kind of helpful technology that really enhances and improves the lives that we live. And so we try to categorize that in a specific way. And this is how we also believe we become loyal to brands at Potato. And so the first thing is whatever work that we do, we're trying to solve a problem. So we're trying to provide utility. And that's really important. When we start any project, we always ask, what problem are we trying to solve for our customers? And that's just the foundation, really, because you can have one brand doing one product and another brand doing another product. The reason why one brand might be priced differently or why we were more willing to spend our money with one company as opposed to another is because we attach a certain value to those products. And so it's really about those brands and products and services being valued by those customers and having a value. Next up is obviously that we then connect emotionally. So there's some kind of emotional relationship between that brand and us, and the reason why when we have that particular feeling, why we choose to select that product or service. And then next is kind of what we really see next up is when we see people evangelize a brand, talk to their friends and say, this is the brand that I personally am relating to. This is the one that I recommend to my peers. And really create that community. And then of increasing importance is that we are building something that benefits society, that the brands that we relate to, we see doing good and helping the world around us. And that's a really important piece that really is that pointy edge of this pyramid that we all aspire to be doing. And so when we're talking about voice, what's different is that we now have multiple different touch points to technology. So as you can see from this photo, when we're indoors now, we quite often have a phone in our hands, a laptop at close access, and quite often now a smart speaker in the room. And so what can voice solve in that multiple touch point world differently to other interfaces? We're trying to solve these problems and think about technology in a vastly different way to how we have done in the past. And so voice might solve one particular part of that experience, or it might solve the entire end-to-end customer journey. But what's really interesting about voice is how voice can specifically take into account perhaps where we are and who we are. And so, as in this photo, what we can see is that perhaps it's an opportunity to adapt an interface to the environment. So unlike a visual interface, it would be, I'm a designer and worked on the web and on mobile for 10 years. We often strive for consistency. We wouldn't change an interface from one day to another for a customer on a visual interface. But with voice, we always adapt our conversation. We don't say the same thing every day to each other and using exactly the same words. We relate and adapt to who we're talking to and where we're talking to them and what we're talking about. And so there's a massive opportunity with voice to build a technology that allows us to speak to each other in a way in which we're thinking about what you need at a certain point in time. So when I'm renting a bike and I'm at a specific location, why don't we personalize the interaction pattern around that? Why don't we take that into account and really think about what the right level of interaction is in that environment? And so in talking about why voice can build loyalty, we can take those different pieces into account. We can build an interface that relates and personalizes to what we're trying to do. And that helps us when we talked about those 3 different steps, it allows us to kind of connect emotionally a little bit more. And I'm going to go deeper on that topic in a minute. But first, I want to talk about what we should even be building. And so the question that is kind of increasingly being looked at from different brands is, okay, so where does voice and this specific interface fit into that product or brand architecture? And so, unfortunately, what we see quite often is people see emerging technology opportunities, and that's the kind of lever with which we start thinking about product design. But that's kind of not the right way, which obviously goes without saying. It's all about the needs and desires of customers. And so when we're talking about building great products or adding new elements or interfaces to our product experiences, it's all about purposeful innovation at the intersection between what emerging technology opportunities provide us and what the needs and desires of our customers are. And so we're quite commonly, as designers at an agency, looking at customer journey maps, looking at that experience through that whole buyer journey or through the entire journey of also buying it, using it. And what we're trying to do is think about where does voice perhaps fit into this and solve some problems that allow us to do it in a way that a visual interface such as web or mobile perhaps doesn't provide the same opportunities. And so 3 things that we generally try to make sure we're looking at and we're talking about is what customers are asking. And this is something a little bit different. So if you've done a customer journey map before, what we try to do is at every stage of that customer journey say, what would a customer be asking? Because I can guarantee you there is tons of opportunities there for you to build a better brand experience if you can have that direct dialogue with them based on what questions they are thinking and perhaps not being able to answer through one of the existing interfaces that they're using. The other one is where a customer is asking that question. And this is where, when we start to talk about voice and when we talked about why voice, we really want to think about the environment. The environment is what kind of decides really which modality or interface we're going to decide to use. If I'm in a car, it's going to obviously be preferable to use my voice. And then lastly, what is the customer's fastest path to action? And this is where we really get into the interesting thing about building a voice experience, because it really requires a certain amount of behavioral change. We're really not used to talking to inanimate objects. And so this is actually a new thing for most customers. And so we need to recognize that in our design processes. We need to make sure that we're considering, well, what would motivate me or give me the ability to decide to go and use a voice interface as opposed to the app that I already have on my phone? And so I'm going to get a little bit technical for the next few slides, which is about some design principles and standing on some of the great research that's happened over multiple years of behavior engineering, which is the fog behavior model. So when we think about why we might choose to use a voice interface, we need to think about that behavior design. And it's all about the motivation. So where my motivations exist from a kind of, I have a particular need and I need to go and get it solved. The ability to do so. So what is my abilities in terms of I'm driving, my hands are tied. Obviously, within that kind of persona, which is both the place and the persona, I might be looking more at, for example, using a voice interface. And then lastly, what are the prompts that are triggers essentially for me to go and make that decision of which interface I choose to use? And taking a quick pause, it's important that when we talk about engineering around behavior, that we're doing it for good, or that we're thinking about purpose. And I think like a great shout out here to kind of Amazon and Google's leaders in the space was when they both added please functionality to an interface. And that's a great example of behavioral design. So recognizing a pattern in how children are using an interface and then choosing to add the please functionality to ensure that we drive the right behaviors in those users. So when we talk about behavioral design, we should always try to make sure that we're using it to encourage the right kind of behavior. So how might we think about behavior when designing voice interfaces? So the first thing that we're trying to achieve is that our brand is the first that comes to mind. That's why we're talking about loyalty during this keynote, is the reason why most brands are trying to build a voice interface is because we want to continue to build that relationship with our customers, and we want our brand to be first that comes to mind for the particular problem or need that we're trying to solve. But then the second, in terms of when we're using voice interfaces, is that the particular need or problem that we're trying to solve, is voice frequently used as the best solution? That tends to build habit-forming products, which if it's used in the right way to build things that help us do better and achieve better in our lives, those things that fit into our daily routines, for example, and speeds us up and frees us from our phone or frees us from our laptop, that can yield great results for kind of society and building great products. So Nir Eyal uses a model called Hooked. I'm sure many people have read this book, but it really translates interestingly into voice and building voice experiences. And so triggers are based upon emotions and feelings. As Nir says in his book, quite often when we build a product or a brand, or we choose one as a consumer, what we choose them based on is a negative feeling. For example, based on needing to relate to somebody or have a personal connection to somebody, or feeling at home and alone, maybe we use social media. And so there are two kinds of triggers. External triggers, those are based upon the things such as an email or marketing email that you might receive that tell you to go and open an app or open a website. And there are internal triggers. Those internal triggers are the things that the mental associations that we make between a problem we're trying to solve and a brand that we choose to solve them. And so with voice interfaces, it's interesting because the discoverability element to it is slightly different. We perhaps don't have those same external triggers that we do with other interfaces. And so we really need to think about designing voice experiences that talk to us in terms of the kind of emotion or feeling that we're trying to solve a problem against. We want the action that we solve it for to be easy and as fast as possible. And so when we think about building great voice experiences for a specific problem that we're trying to solve, we want to get the user to solving that problem as quickly as possible. And that's one of the big opportunities with voice. So build for things that you think the user needs that they can quickly solve. And then this is where we really get into what makes voice different and really great if we think of through this model about building products that fit into our routines or fit into our needs or help us with feelings. The reward stage is when we can talk about having solved that problem or having realized the need that we were looking for. And so with voice, we can build a personalized response to that user. And when we go back to talking about loyalty, that really makes us feel that that brand understands what we came here looking for. And one of the things that Nir talks about is the idea of investment. So as we go through that cycle, we give something back and we say, this worked for me perhaps within the feedback loop so that our products and services can get to know us better. And that underlying technology of AI that sits underneath all the voice work that we do, that enables us to build these better experiences for our users. And so to kind of recap before I hand over the mic, why build voice experiences and why they can deliver loyalty is because there's an opportunity to connect emotionally with users, to build products that our users want to evangelize, and then to really build brands and branded experiences that benefit society and enhance what we're trying to achieve and the problems we need to solve. In terms of what we should build, let's make sure we always start with what the user needs are. Let's think about what the user is trying to solve and relate the opportunities that are provided to us from new technology to deliver such experiences. And in terms of how to build them, remember that voice is a new experience for users. So think about a loop like NIRS, for example, or Fogg's behavior model, to remember that we're only going to pick the technology that's easiest for us to use. And we want to build experiences that are both easy and also deeply personal, so that there is a benefit to us in terms of choosing that specific interface for the specific use case we're trying to build. So we're delighted to introduce Azra Rashid. She's Director, Executive Producer, and Digital Experiences at Disney Parks Experiences and Products. Azra and her team are working to create innovative, engaging voice experiences that can connect with consumers in more meaningful ways. Please join us in welcoming Azra to the stage.